exclusively on the Pod Station.
Welcome listeners to A Film Podssey, brought to you by the Two Marks. This time we're reviewing No Time to Die, and once again the Two Marks are delivering an irreverent review, providing you lively debate, conversation and social commentary. So here with your ears only, the guy who loved me, the man with the golden smile and massive thunderballs. He can be a bit of a spectre but has a license to thrill. So to die another day, let me introduce my friend and co-host, Mr. Mark Pollard.
Hey mate.
Hello.
I feel like I've got no retort to what you've just said at all. Absolutely nothing at all. Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I feel like I should have made more effort to try and prepare to retort back, but I made as much effort as the director of this film.
Absolutely. I love the segue. Yeah, nice. Yeah, you did indeed. Which director?
Well, I was going to say, perhaps we should explain what film we're going to discuss today.
James Bond, No Time to Die.
Except if you're watching this film. Spoiler alert. How we feel.
Well, let's just say this isn't going to be a long one, is it? So we've seen it.
We've seen it.
It's taken 18 months to come out, or technically 6 years to come out. Spectre was the last film that came out, because Skyfall came before that.
Yeah.
Spectre, which this film is supposed to directly follow from, was in 2015, and now we're in 2021. The 6 years have gone, and 18 months of when's it out and pushing back the release. Question to you, because I think you normally ask me what I thought of it, then that will be the end of the podcast. So let me ask you what you thought of it, and then what I will do is, instead of answering that question, I will just give you my enjoyment of Bond films historically.
Are you a James Bond person?
I'm a fan. I wouldn't say I know a lot of stuff. I was brought up on them. Every Christmas time when they're on, without fail, on ITV, I love them. I know over the course of time, they're probably not always aged well, let's say. However, I'm not watching them for that. I'm watching them for
the spy thriller type thing, aren't you?
Americans try to copy the James Bond thing because James Bond is quintessentially English.
Yeah.
I watched it for the stunts, more so now, but even when I was a kid, I just loved the death-defying feats, and we'll go into that later.
Gadgets.
All the gadgets. And the villains were also like, Mr. Bond, do you expect me to talk?
And the cars.
And the cars, yeah. For me, was why I watched them. And every Christmas, I watch them, even though they're ITV. I mean, they're not short films anyway, are they?
No.
By the time adverts have gone in with ITV, you've got like a 16-hour film, like watching Lord of the Rings. I love them all. Tell me what you think.
I quite like James Bond films historically for all of those reasons that you remember as a kid. They were the great, exciting, thrillery spy films that you watch, and I guess every time they're on, you reminisce about, or it takes you back to your childhood, so that's quite cool. But as a franchise, actually I think as I've got older, or perhaps as other franchises have come into my life, like of course Marvel, I've become less arsed about Bond. As in like impartial. The idea of this film coming out, I was a bit like, oh okay. Whereas if a Marvel film would be like, came out, how quickly can I get to the cinema to see it? This one, it's if I get time I might go to the cinema, otherwise I'll wait till it comes out and I'll just watch it then type thing. I'd probably still see the film, but that urgency to see it, that hunger and desire isn't quite there with Bond films. And I don't know whether that's with age or my tastes are changing or whether it's run its course as a concept. I don't know. But that's kind of how I felt about this film. Daniel Craig's Bond has actually been quite a good one. Of the 4 films he's done, is this the 5th film? This is the 5th film, isn't it? The first and the third, so Casino Royale and Skyfall were mega movies. Absolutely loved those completely. They were modern day takes on Bond in a way where I just thought they were brilliant. Number 2 and number 4 I thought were a bit wanky and a bit self-indulgent, a bit like the older Bonds of like Pierce Brosnan, where they ended up getting lost in their own arseholes. It's like Bond and we can do whatever, and they end up this ridiculously complicated, unnecessarily stupidly big bad was created. So I didn't know coming into this on the basis there was a 50-50 chance of it being great or shit. I had no idea what to expect, and having now seen it, I feel that they have decided that James Bond no longer needs to exist. They will move it into the modern times, which I guess we'll talk about, and I don't particularly have a major issue to a point, but they've decided James Bond is no more, and and the ability to wrap up all of the really shitty storylines that they've kind of been dragging through the last 4 films was just so half-assed. It was unreal.
I would categorise this film as a stocking filler movie for the reason you've just quite rightly said. I think I do love James Bond and was very disappointed with this one simply because we know from another film that we'd seen the sequel of, The Suicide Squad, what happens when you try to change something. For example, if you write a story and you then get replaced halfway through and I'm brought in to write the better parts of it, you can tell like this movie for me was essentially 2 people's stories.
And one of them giving less of a shit on the story than the old one.
Well, one literally going, what I'm going to do. And the same happened with Rian Johnson with Star Wars. That's probably the better example. They'd set up what they were going to do for the final 3 films of Star Wars, and they brought in someone who wasn't a fan, couldn't care less. It may have turned up for the paycheck, we don't know. But literally went, he's dead, that's going nowhere, and ruined the whole arc of the story, in which case the last film had to try and explain why that had happened when that wasn't the plan. This has not only been 18 months coming. Danny Boyle, who was brought in to direct, left due to, inverted commas, creative differences. They then brought in Fujiyama, I think that's how you pronounce his name. It went through several screenplay drafts beforehand. Then somebody somewhere panicked and went, we're not sure whether it's going to be good. They were supposed to release it, they didn't. They were offered £400 million for it to stream, they declined that. Now I wonder the reason why they've declined the release and pushed it back is because the storyline's about a racist virus. So they've gone, COVID-19 still about. Do we want to put a movie on at the cinema when the cinemas are on their knees about a virus that individually targets a certain type of genome? Probably not want to do that. So I don't think they've held back for any other reason than the financial impact of nobody going to see a film about a virus that just targets a specific group. And in between all that, Amazon bought MGM. So now Amazon owns their arseholes. I don't know whether they own the rights to Bond. It's still under the Broccoli family ownership. This film has suffered from rewrites, it's suffered from directors leaving. You can tell you're watching that film, which is 3 hours roughly. It is literally 2 separate stories. You can see that Phoebe Waller-Bridge has been wheeled in to throw some humour, because now you can't use the old Bond phrases that Roger Moore coined, and Sean Connery tried it, but Roger Moore was a bit more of a campy, comedic, but he'd always do what Arnie did.
He was a bit tongue-in-cheek, wasn't it, what he did?
And I think each Bond was good for what they did. George Lazenby was good, and what they've tried to do with this film, it's got elements of Doctor No. They rebooted this franchise with Casino Royale, and Quantum of Solace carried on. So what this Bond path has been is, instead of each Bond movie being slightly different, this one has followed a path where we've spent from beginning of Casino Royale through Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, Spectre, and now No Time to Die, has set up the vastness of Spectre, who are all now dead.
Well, this is the thing. Spectre's always been an irritant to me. I liked Casino Royale and Skyfall because they were largely standalone type films. I know there was sort of elements of Spectre drawn in, but for me, it felt like a very small part of the process. It was more about the character of Bond. That's why I really liked them. The Quantum of Solace and Spectre I disliked fundamentally because it had that, it felt like they were crowbarring in this universal baddie that always applied to being the baddies, and every problem that Bond ever dealt with was because of this organisation, where in essence I'm a bit like, well, actually there's enough bad people out there doing enough weird shit where you don't need to keep on reverting everything back to this one organisation. And so I didn't enjoy those films because I felt like it was being crowbarred in. This film was even worse because not only did they crowbar the same bloody bad guy organisation in, they wiped them all out and replaced them with another person who was trying to replace the organisation they just wiped out. So I was like, okay, so you've just undone 4 films worth of bad guy world building and replaced it with someone who is tantamount to exactly the same thing, but without any of the background. So I care even less about him than I did do the organisation I didn't like in the first place.
A guy who's stolen Lucifer's name,
yeah,
but he spells it wrong because maybe he's got a lisp or something, I don't know. But Lucifer, who cares who he is? Basically a guy who looks like he's been to the Phantom of the Opera.
They didn't explain who he was, why he was. They threw the odd bits and pieces in, but to a large degree I have still no idea who he was, what motivated him. He just seemed to decide overnight he wanted to be a bad person. And
well, let me tell you what that is, because I didn't have a fucking Scooby-Doo. Turns out that Mr. White, who you know from Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, and the other movies throughout the whole of these series of 5 films, yes, they are standalone, but they're also part of a collection, the Daniel Craig collection, it'll be known as. Mr. White, who is the father of the woman who this Lucifer goes to the house of to kill Mr. White, that's her dad, and that's the one who's involved in Spectre, that James Bond ends up speaking to at the end of Casino Royale.
But it's that long since Mr. White existed, I don't give a flying two fuck about that. And I guess that's where this film's lost me, and why Quantum of Solace and Spectre lost me, because they were kind of trying to do the same thing. Daniel Craig as James Bond, and what he's done with that character, I think has been mega. Absolutely brilliant. He's brought a real gritty, real persona to the character. The ruthlessness of Casino Royale, the fact that he has a bit of a history and a backstory as a damaged person in Skyfall, even in the shitter ones where you can see he's getting older, he's damaged, all his old injuries are really causing him problems, he's got alcohol issues. I like that because that made that character, as opposed to being a superhero, which is how he's been portrayed by all the other people, he actually felt like a real human being who was vulnerable and mortal, but still had a set of skills that perhaps gave him a better chance of surviving, whereas me and you would have been wiped out 5 minutes after we'd arrived at the fancy party that we were turning up to. Those two things never have quite married, and in this film I feel they've completely lost all the shit. And I don't know whether it's because there's been such a gap between this film and the previous film, but it felt like I couldn't really remember who any of the characters were, and I didn't want to have to go back and watch Spectre in order to understand this next film, because that feels like you've got to do homework before you go to the pictures, and surely going to the pictures should just be a fun experience. Whereas this film almost played on the fact that if I hadn't reminded myself or remembered specifically about the previous film, I didn't have a clue. I couldn't remember who the girl was that he apparently was in love with. I couldn't remember who half the characters was. So when he went to the Spectre party and they all get wiped out, he's got that girl who's helping kill. Couldn't remember who the chuff she was.
She wasn't in the other one.
You see, I couldn't remember. I assumed she was because I don't know who she is.
One that had turned up wearing very little.
Yeah.
In an anti-feministic film, just 2 weeks out of training for the CIA, and then managed to batter everybody with their big heels. That one.
Exactly.
She isn't in the other one.
Well, you see, I assumed she must have been in, and I've forgotten her because I didn't know who she was. I didn't even know who she was working for.
She's technically a Bond girl, but you can't say Bond girl and have to say Bond woman. Bullshit. But trying to be all woke about it, put women in powerful positions, yet she's there with basically a dress right up to her arsehole and goes, oh, well, you have to forgive me, I'm only 2 weeks out of CIA training, and then batters everyone, which is really good. She's a strong character there, throwaway character.
But she only lasts 10 minutes.
Yeah, and then done, just to jump forward a bit, that the guy who's looking after the world's most dangerous viruses, clearly on the take, or was a double agent, because that wasn't going to be seen fucking...
Well, it was the Russian accent that gave it away.
Absolutely. He then obviously swaps out the virus that was supposed to kill James Bond and swaps it out with the one that killed Spectre, because Lucifer, whatever his surname is, wanting to get back at Spectre because Mr. White killed his family but didn't kill him effectively, which is why he has to wear a Phantom of the Opera mask because he's all scarred from the poison that was used, and goes to the house that's at the very beginning of the story. Now, if you don't know all that, you're fucked, aren't you? Let's be honest.
Well, I didn't. That's the point.
Welcome to my version of No Time to Die. That's where that all comes from. That's his motivation. He survived an attack by Mr. White, an order from Blofeld. He manages to persuade the Russian virologist to swap out the virus. So when he goes to the party, Bond should have died, which is why Blofeld's got this eye on a plate thing, which he's managed to do from the world's toughest prison, Belmarsh Prison.
Your basement.
Basically, yeah. Welcome.
That's where you keep people, and you do it very securely, in fairness to you.
No one has an eyeball on a plate when they're in my prison, I can assure you. So he manages, I don't even know he got an eyeball into the prison, but anyway.
Move on from that,
Let's dispel belief for a minute, because you're going to have to as we move into this film. Bond survives every Spectre agent that's been out across the world because it targets the DNA of individual people. They're all dead. Spectre's now gone. He's now basically the only villain in this movie. Bond takes that to Mr. Blofeld. They don't know who he is because he's retired. His 00 status has been allocated to somebody else now. So he goes to see him. Obviously, there's this wanting of villains to tell people what their plan was because they don't think they're going to get killed and then ultimately get killed. He tells him his whole plan. I thought Bond was going in for a peck on the cheek, but ends up getting riled up, touches him, and because he's touched his girlfriend, the daughter, the daughter of Mr. White, Blofeld's dead.
Yeah, I'm glad we saved him in the last film and then represented him as a dangerous villain in this film, only to wipe him out 5 minutes later.
Spectre essentially was an origins, similar to how Casino Royale was a precursor and preambled where James Bond was at the very beginning of the movie, because it was shot in black and white, because that tells you it's old. Was it John Menzies? That's a shot.
John Mendes. Was it Mendes?
It was somebody Mendes.
Shawn Mendes?
No, he's a singer. I'm saying John Menzies, the newsagents that's gone bust. Was it Sam Mendes that directed Casino Royale?
No, Martin Campbell.
Like I said, Martin Campbell. who was the director of Casino Royale, wanted to show Bond before he got his 00 status.
But I like that. I think Daniel Craig has been really good as Bond, and even in this film, as much as I'm starting to slag off this film, I still think Daniel Craig played an amazing role as Bond in this film, because you still had that ruthless streak that we first saw in that scene you're describing back in Casino Royale, where he was like, right, I've got a job to do, bang, bang, done, give me 00 status, please. He's got that in his locker. You've got the fact that he was a bit older, so things are a bit harder. The fact he's retired, so he doesn't quite have the same resources. But by the same token, he has zero fucks if he feels that he needs to do something, and people aren't going to back him up. So the British Secret Service were like, well, it's got nothing to do with you, mind your own business. And he's like, well, all right, I'll go do it with the Americans instead. I don't care, it needs sorting, it's your mess, but if you're not going to do it, I'll go somewhere else. And I quite like that, and I particularly liked the ending when he finds out he's got a kid. Obviously cottons on early on when he's in the house. I think he sort of knows.
Well, I think the audience cottoned on an hour beforehand when he saw the blue eyes.
Yeah, but at the end, when the big sort of bye-bye scene, I thought he did that well as well, because I genuinely was gutted to see Bond going, listen, how many people have I killed? How many situations have I, by the skin of my teeth, avoided this from happening? It was only a matter of time before eventually it was going to catch up with me. Here it is. And I thought he played that brilliantly throughout. As a Bond character, I think he's been brilliant throughout. What's let him down is this constant desire to create a universe that they don't seem to want to fully commit to. Whenever they need a MacGuffin, they turn to Spectre. Oh, we've got a hole in the storyline. Spectre, we need a bad guy. Spectre. And that's kind of all they've done, and that's what's let the films that have fallen on their arse down, and this one was exactly that.
Judi Dench says, if you get the job, do the fucking job. Quote, that's what she says. We've talked in other podcasts about the fact that a lot of the time we give a hard time to the actors, but let's step back. They're acting given by the script and the screenplay they're given, and okay, I know some of them have executive producer credit as well, so they have a little bit more say in what they can do. And in fact, in this movie, I know Daniel Craig was given and had a few ideas of what things should do, but because it's gone through such and such a long period of time, and this has ended up a stocking filler movie where if I go and see it, it's a bit of a bonus. It's like getting a tangerine at the bottom of your stocking, a bit uncomfortable if you're wearing heels. Your big present is Avengers Endgame, and then you hear that James Bond is out and you go, should we go and see that? A bit of a bonus film in the same month. You go to see the cinema twice. This one, the payoff was diabolical. I mean, I've shortlisted it, a whistle-stop tour, what the movie essentially equated as. But if you look at all the Bond, okay, taken away, maybe they're not all great. They don't translate well in today's circumstances. If we take them on the fact of how they were, they're all enjoyable films. Never Say Never Again isn't particularly, because that's not canon. That's just Sean Connery getting some money. He wanted to remake Thunderball. The best movie that's underrated by all accounts, Moonraker. It's taken Bond into space. Now you go, oh, that's not very good. Well, Fast and the Furious 9 has just done that. How is that unreasonable as a film franchise than doing that? It's either been Spectre as the villain or Spectre adjacent. You know, Jaws, I think, was a villain from Spectre. The villains that you had in those Bond movies, I would argue, are better written than these Bond villains have. Odd Job with his hat, Blofeld at the time.
You see, I didn't know they're all Spectre. I didn't know that the big bad for James Bond was Spectre.
Yeah, in a roundabout way, or Spectre adjacent, as I like to say. Jaws worked for Spectre, I think. Blofeld. No, Odd Job. So what I've done there, I've taken Blofeld and I've taken Odd Job and I've made Blowjob.
Oh, wait. We know what's on your mind then.
Yeah, thank you. I'll wait till later.
You'll have to buy me dinner first.
But then the other villains that weren't linked to Spectre, if memory serves, because I'm going back to the 70s and even earlier to the 68. The guy who was in the one with Jane Fonda where Roger Moore runs across the crocodiles.
Yeah.
You think about all them, you think about the car chases, and you think about the car chases at the time when they didn't have the permits, they would just drive a car and they didn't have all of the red tape they have now. All those stunts, that one of the biggest things they've replicated is in Moonraker. The stunt where they jump out of the aeroplane has been repeated and copied earlier as the latest Mission Impossible film, Fallout. And you think it was done in the late 70s. What you're seeing is not CGI, it's not practical effects, it is a stuntman and a cameraman fighting in the air with hidden parachutes. That was then. It's been the template for stunts today. The car chases where they spin a car around, it's all down to precision driving. You remember the sheriffs chasing them?
Yeah, and I do remember that one.
Yeah, and the car doesn't have a barrel roll, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Hardest thing to do to roll a car, and yet these were done. One of the greatest things about any James Bond film is you knew when you were watching it, you weren't watching green screen, you weren't watching blue screen, it wasn't CGI, it was actually happening, so you're getting your money's worth. Because Vic Armstrong was the stunt guy in some of these, and I don't even think that he's involved in this one, but he ended up being the stunt coordinator Terminator and was doing all the car chases and stuff like that. Aston Martin gave them umpteen vehicles to mess up. Aston Martin is a brand supporter of the films. They choreographed it wonderfully. Here, it is literally they've given up. My takeaway from the Bond thing was different to yours at the end, which I'll tell you at the end. Let me whistle top
go
just
nuts.
at my note. Q is apparently gay. Doesn't build gadgets apparently, just cooks nice dinners for two. M is a genocidal alcoholic. They wanted female empowerment, but Moneypenny, who shot James in Skyfall, is now behind a desk serving drinks and there's a secretary stroke PA. Naomi, who's been given a 00 signature, gives it up in a heartbeat when Bond returns.
And did fuck all in this film, by the way.
And did we'll
come to that. We will come back to that, but probably one of the biggest wastes of a character. You create one with the new 007, instead of making her better than Bond to justify that title, they kind of just have her turning up after Bond arrives and not doing it as effectively.
Well, again, if you're going to have this as a woke fest, which it literally is.
I knew you were going to go down this route. When I was watching it, I'm thinking, Latham's having an aneurysm about this.
At the end of this film, I laughed out loud and went, fucking hell. But because I didn't realise how loud I am in a quiet cinema, when you've got soundproofing, when someone's going, fucking hell, well, people heard me. So you got that going on. You've decided to make her a woman, which is okay, wonderful. She isn't. And according to the woman who owns the rights to the Bond franchise, she's gone on record saying James Bond isn't a woman. Ian Fleming wrote him as a white quintessential Englishman, and that's it. If you want other characters, I've said before, just write other characters.
Well, this is probably an issue I have with the ending, which is that they've brought James Bond to an end, and what they now want to do is keep the James Bond franchise going, but without James Bond, which feels like a bit of a misnomer. Whereas actually what I feel they could and should have done is introduce the characters that they have. So Moneypenny, the new 007. Did we find out what her name was?
Naomi.
Okay.
Yeah, Naomi, probably short for no more involvement.
But you see, we could have had almost like a Marvel-style extended universe that gave these characters their own films, or had TV series that panned it out, or had films where they are the stars of the show, which sort of run concurrent to Bond, but separately, so to speak. And that's what they could have done, because then they could have actually had her as being a proper kick-ass character who did cool stuff, and therefore allowed for them to do it. But what they were actually doing was going, hey, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, guess what we're going to do? Because Bond is fundamentally a white, male, sexist, alcoholic pig, we're going to wind that character down, which I don't have an issue with as such, because I get it and I understand the flaws with that character, but they didn't do it properly in this film, because they didn't give her the chance to basically show us what was going to be replaced. As I say, she always turned up half an hour after Bond had already fixed the problem, or she turned up at the same time but failed, so the person got away, or she didn't achieve what she was out to achieve, or when her and Bond partnered up, she got sent on the shit jobs. She's like, yeah, you go find out what that fella's doing and let me know while I go do the proper work. And that's kind of how it felt, which fundamentally made what they were doing defunct.
It made it flawed, because that's exactly right, isn't it? It's trying to say Bond is a misogynistic man. It was already turning when Pierce Brosnan took over and Judi Dench was M, who you killed off. Well, not you, I'm not
Well, she was amazing.
She was amazing. Female leader of MI6.
Which, ironically, and bearing in mind, we've now got a gay Q, which again, great. I want more diversity on the screen.
25 movies, we didn't know he was gay.
I don't really mind that they've introduced that, but when you have that added into, we've now got a 007 who's a woman and from a
marked identity group,
ill-represented part of society. We've got Moneypenny, who, as you quite rightly say, was just woefully underused. So you've got all these great things, and I can't stress enough, I am so happy that films do properly start to represent society, and it's well before time that should be the case. However, ironically, you've still got a white male who's now heading up MI6 and is essentially in charge, so it's a bit like...
Who's an alcoholic and genocidal because he wanted to create this virus.
Yeah, so he kind of feels a bit daft that you've taken out Judi Dench, who quite frankly was amazing as M.
Yes.
I mean, she was just fucking awesome.
Best
I've
one.
never seen anyone keep Bond in check in the way that she did.
Well, Pierce Brosnan, she says to him, you are a dinosaur of a bygone age. That set of movies of Pierce Brosnan was changing. If you look at the evolution of the films, women were no longer the victims. If you want to get into the toxic victimization trope where Bond would sleep with somebody to get information, they'd shifted that. That happened with Roger Moore. The best identity of strong women is in Moonraker with the CIA agent Goodhead. She challenges James Bond. Is actually a counterpoint to James Bond in Moonraker and stands her own and makes it clear that she ain't going to deal with any of his sexism, not the sexist particularly, but the misogynistic type behaviour that people don't like anymore. She's the best counterpoint to him, and he's not trying to bed her, he's not trying to woo her to get information. I mean, that was what was coming out of it. Pierce Brosnan's era was the moving out of it and was being checked, saying, we know you're a dinosaur.
But he still was. I mean, those films still fell into that category.
We know this goes on, we know the people, we know what, there's people out there that do that. Let's not forget he's an MI6 officer with a license to kill. We don't know what people who are in those high pressure roles do and are. I mean, you speak to anyone who's a Navy SEAL or SAS if you know they are, because he'd probably kill you if you found out. But they do things like...
This is why Daniel Craig was such a good James Bond, because in the first film, Casino Royale, he does actually do that, doesn't he? The woman, when he comes out the seawater with his big boobs, he beds that guy's wife to get information from her, and she ends up getting killed, and that shows his ruthless streak. But there's other things that he does to make it ruthless, and actually, save for the odd occasion when he did that to get some information, he was a lot more like, I'll do what I need to do to get the job done.
And you would.
Biggest platform of danger I've ever faced was
was going back when your order at McDonald's is wrong.
Eating some chicken that had a date on it that was 2 days past its best by. Do I, don't I? Am I going to regret this?
Eating brie that's been in the sun. I once had a crab stick that was left on a table buffet for 3 hours. So that's the biggest amount of danger. But these people live this where they're going to die at any moment. So you need to take yourself out of your cushy cinema seat that you've paid £10 in, and you need to go, if I was a guy with a license to kill, so I'm highly trained, you don't have attachments, you're not connected to anyone, because they will become risks to you and your life, because they will kidnap your family and they'll coerce you to work against your government. You've come out of the 80s with the Cold War, you've been into the 90s where you've been fighting Afghanistan past 30 years, and now we're in a war where it's done by drones. Your enjoyment may just be, you would go out somewhere enjoying your time out, not care because you might be dead tomorrow, and you'd have some cocaine and martini shaken on shared,
and maybe pay for some sex.
Now, that might be seen by today's society, who have no clue about what goes on in the Secret Service, and they don't need to. They go home very secure, happy in their beds that they can watch Love Island, and they wake up the next day, go to work, and they don't realise that 30 suicide bombers have been foiled by our protective services. So if that person just happens to be a little bit misogynistic, I'm alright with that. Is it right in today's society? Probably not. But if it was a plumber doing it, I'll probably have a problem. When there's a guy protecting our national security and global interests, do you not know what their job involves? Probably going to be giving them a bit more leeway. However, all this film is tokenism, pandering, checkboxing. When you go to see a James Bond film, the same as you would go and see a Harry Potter film or the Fast and the Furious, you know Fast and the Furious is going to involve cars, capers, the complete dispelling of the belief of physics. You know Harry Potter is going to involve magic, creatures that don't think exist.
They don't, Mark.
Oh. Shit. If you go there and you go, well, I'm a bit offended now because there was a bloody dragon in that, or it was a massive spider, you know what Bond is about. There's 25 movies that have set that up. You rightly say, and I don't disagree, and they've tried it once because they did it in Die Another Day, and Halle Berry's character was actually going to be a spin-off, not to replace Bond, because you don't need to replace Bond. Bond is an established character that's been written the way it's been written by the author. If you want to have a black James Bond, don't have a black James Bond, have a 008, 009 as a spin-off. They tried it with the Bourne films to do a TV show. It got cancelled because it was diabolical. Just shows you that sometimes what you want isn't always what you're going to get.
I don't even mind that they give 007 to another person. That's fine for me. It makes sense that the assigned number is for the person who holds the seat at that time, but it does fundamentally stop being a James Bond film because the name James Bond doesn't really work if James Bond isn't in the film. It becomes a 00 movie or a Secret Service movie, and I think that's where I feel I'm slightly confused where it's going, because it feels like the next film is not going to be a James Bond film, it's going to be a 00 film. Can't be James Bond because James Bond is the name of a person. 007 is the name of an allocated secret agent.
I think you're right, it can be. That's what made it stupid, is they've given the designation to be radical and pioneering, and then the moment they've given it, the lady who's got it, Nomi, has it for 5 minutes and then Bond's back and she goes, here, you can have it. So it didn't mean anything.
But maybe Nomi gets it back in the next film, but no. Nomi isn't James Bond, she's Nomi. She is her own person with her own characteristics and her own backstory, but she's not James Bond because her name's not James Bond, it's Nomi. I'm interested to see, and as I say, I'm quite glad that they've brought in these characters or introduced these facets to properly represent things that have been sadly lacking from James Bond, and probably would have meant that the franchise would die anyway way by virtue of not being representative of society. But ultimately, it's not going to be a James Bond film going forward because James Bond is now dead.
What they've done here is exactly what Joss Whedon did when he found out Angel was cancelled and killed everybody. They've killed the franchise. The franchise is well and truly fucked. Anyone now who needs to write a James Bond, all your characters are dead. Your big villain's gone.
You can't continue the universe. You have to reboot it.
So it will be a reboot. All these characters they've introduced won't be back. Guarantee it. It's just an absolute shit show.
But that's a shame because Moneypenny I love.
Yeah, Moneypenny might be.
Q's been really good.
Going back to the Q thing, spending more time than they have, the fact that he's now gay isn't a problem. They've done exactly what they always do, is we've had 25 Bond movies and only by the single sentence, he's waiting for his date to appear.
Yeah, no, I suppose to play the counterpoint to that, if you assign the Q in the same way as we have M and 007, it's the person who holds that seat is Q. So we're not saying that in the 25 movies it's been the same Q throughout that, although I suppose that does then ask the question of how James Bond's managed to survive through so many Qs. But let's ignore that logic.
Even if what you say is true, which is valid, the 5 movies that Ben Wishaw's been Q, nobody's...
But they could have done it at any point, couldn't they? Instead of just going, right, this film's the film where we correct everything.
Yeah, also the question I need to ask you to rationalise this is how many times during your day do you tell people you're heterosexual or feel a need you have to?
I suppose it's mentioned because they want people to feel like they're being representative. I guess it would have been nice if they'd have done it in earlier films when they weren't also trying to introduce other characters like a female 007. It's like, well, okay, now it does feel a little tick boxy exercisey because what you're trying to do is correct this whole franchise in a single film, whereas actually you should have been trying to do that gradually over the 5 films so that come the end of Daniel Craig's stint, either you introduce a new James Bond but with a far better representative universe that supports that character, or you get rid of James Bond and you've got it all done, but you've done it properly and naturally and
it's organic,
organically.
And that's
whereas this film didn't feel like that at all.
I have no problem with organic diversity at all. My biggest bugbearer is when it's exactly that. We've had 5 movies of Ben. It would have been nice. Ultimately, James Bond isn't going there for Q to tell him, oh, by the way, I'm gay, or intimate that. He's going there and go,
He wants a pen that's exploding.
Yeah, we didn't get any gadgets.
We did get a couple.
No, we didn't. Name 3.
Well, he had that EMP.
You can't use the DB9 guns because that Bond car's been used throughout all of the films. Yeah. So that's not really new. What other things? Part of the movie...
he showed all his tech skills, didn't he, really?
Well, he showed him a table with candles and 2 plates on.
He jumped on the computer and there was like turny roundy.
That's not a gadget. That's him doing his job.
I know what you're saying. I just think everyone was underserved in this film. Apart from Daniel Craig, who I thought did a brilliant job. And I thought everyone who did their bits did it. You see, I was gutted about flaming Felix getting killed. Yeah. I love Felix and I particularly love... No, sorry, let me correct that. I absolutely love Jeffrey Wright and his portrayal of Felix. Yeah. And I've loved him from Casino Royale. He's been a great one. And then they go and flipping kill him off.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that is exactly what I'm talking about organic diversity. Throughout all the films, Felix would be typically a white American. Making him black American is organic. Jeffrey Wright is an amazing actor. So when you introduce him as essentially what Casino Royale was, a reboot of the Bond franchise, why not? Makes sense. Doesn't change the story. He's very good. He's the voice of the Watcher in The What If. He's in Westworld.
Yeah.
Very good actor, strong performances. Done it really well. All you've done, as you rightly say, underserve him. You've killed him off the same way as Vesper was killed.
And ironically, from Felix and to the fella who kills him, again, you've had another white male kill off.
Yeah.
It's a bit like all the characters who seem to do all right or come on top.
You're not doing yourself any favours.
No, it's just a bit shit because I really like Felix and I know he's been killed off in previous reincarnations of Bond. He was killed off
eaten by a shark.
Yeah, and it was...
Living Daylights.
Yeah.
He was being hung above a shark-infested area.
So I know it's not been done before, but it was just shit.
He drowned and he wasn't even a spectacular death.
No.
And in Bond, you're like, leave me. It's like, not being funny, mate. My girlfriend, Vesper, died exactly the same way. I ain't going to let that happen again. Oh, I am going to do that.
Because you're bleeding from your gut, so I know you're going to die anyway. Yeah. So
Bye.
Actually what I should do is put a bullet in your head so you're not left choking and drowning to
Horrible
death.
Yeah.
And get my ass out of here so that we don't both cark it.
Yeah, exactly that. So you've literally gone through all of your main cast. The other thing is the Bond villain trying to be Dr. No with his fucking volcanic base of operations.
I hated that.
Right, and gone, oh, what have I done? I've put it in a nuclear silo so everyone everyone's going to get irradiated and have no children.
And I'm going to create a garden of the most deadliest plants. Oh, when they'd finished that, were they going to bring in the shark pond and the laser beams?
You mentioned Dr. Evil. That was a parody of the James Bond film. James Bond has been parodied across all of the films over the years because things you take away from it. The best things you have ever had as henchmen and villains' bases and the way they dispatch people. Piranha-infested pond, shark-infested pond, all of those wonderful things. A chair that exploded because you didn't do the mission properly, or you've got a knife in your shoe, or you've got a bionic arm because it got eaten by a crocodile. They're your best Bond villains. This is literally going, I don't give a toss.
And you go work there, by the way.
Yeah, well, what's the job application for that?
Exactly.
HR's going to go...
you go on a recruitment website looking for a job and it's, do you not give a shit about dying of radiation poisoning?
Do you want children?
Yeah. You may be killed at any point by virtue of the fact that you will be... collaborating with the world's most evilest person
that no one knew.
Apply here.
Yeah,
30,000 a year.
And a volcanic base basically set between Japan and Russia that nobody seemed to know was there. And he's built this wonderful infrastructure that Russia and Japan didn't know about for all these years. People working in acid that doesn't really show itself until
well, it was funny when someone fell in and that person devolved and they were, oh, we best get out of here, ignoring the fact that they were all in hazmat suits in water that they clearly had no knowledge of, putting what was obviously highly radioactive stuff in there. Yeah. It's like, oh, so now you're bothered because someone's fallen in there and dissolved. Is it now too dangerous to be in there?
Exactly. That was another laugh out loud moment. And then the end where the shittest villain ever is having a bit of a wrestle in his pond. Bond shoots him straight away and then he goes, ooh, and scratches his face and goes, now you can't touch the two women you want. Oh, fuck off. The two women, you shouldn't love them. Your problem, my mate, is not work out very quickly 2 hours ago that the kid with blue eyes is your kid because you've been banging this woman. And now you're going, oh, I love you both. And then he goes, oh, you can't. So what I'm going to do is, because I can't go on, I'm just going to go suicide by rocket. Now, it might be a great performance by Daniel Craig, I completely agree, but that's not James Bond. James Bond would know. He's a fucking trained MI6 agent. He's faced down death-defying missions before. He isn't going to go, oh, I love you. I can't go on because I've just found my daughter. So all of a sudden, I love her more than life. So now I can't go on. I'm just not going to bother getting off this island. I'm just going to let it blow up and die and fuck the whole franchise up. So that's what my take on that was. And I actually laughed at that point, which was a bit embarrassing because no one else was laughing because it was shit. Basically, the movie, they've gone, I don't care anymore. Amazon's bought us. We're just going to churn out this shit, kill everyone. Any possible connection, we'll do a general Snoke and we'll kill them all off. No one knows what's going to go on.
But it's now not a James Bond movie. It's just like another secret agent movie now because Bond doesn't exist unless they reboot it. If they reboot it, they're getting rid of all of the characters. So they're getting rid of the gay Q. They're getting rid of the empowered Moneypenny. They're getting rid of the female black 007. They're getting rid of all that if they reboot it. Or they reboot it where James Bond is a woman, but no. I suppose they could do it. The name James Bond, the name James...
Jane Bond.
The name James, I suppose they could do it as a bit of it's a tongue-in-cheek joke. My parents always wanted a boy, so they called me James, so I'd probably find that amusing. But they'd lose all of the stuff that they've kind of shoehorned in, which defeats the point of having shoehorned it in, so to speak. They'd have been better off doing this thing properly so they could build the universe using those characters. And it's
a shit show, mate. And obviously Phoebe Waller-Bridge isn't going to be asked back to screenplay. Maybe she will. I think they should ask you. Ultimately, they will reboot it. It'll be rebooted in about 3 to 4 years, by which point the Zoomer generation will have fucked off to the latest hand-gluing extravaganza and will return to some sensibility where people go, it's a movie. We don't need to be political. We don't need to tell people that, oh, by the way, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a marked identity. Let's tokenism all the way up to the max. Let's just live our lives. It's not representative in reality. If I walk into town, I know for a fact that no one's going to tell me they're gay. I'm not going to have anyone go, ooh, feminism. It's literally people will get on with their lives. So all they've done is try to appeal to certain groups of people to make them happy, but at the same time, fuck them all off. You haven't established anything. There were so many strong characters that could have been used in other movies. You don't need to kill James Bond off. Yes, we know he's leaving, but you would just recast the Bond. Tom Hiddleston, great Bond. There's so many...
Well, Idris Elba was linked with it, and again, Idris Elba would have been a fantastic, or may still be a fantastic Bond.
He said on record, James Bond isn't black, and said he wouldn't want it.
Yeah, but you see, I'm not asked about that. Things change. I'm not bothered about sticking to Ian Fleming's verbatim situation. I'm not even bothered about having a female Bond, but it still has to be Bond.
Yeah, but it isn't though, is it? That's the point.
Well, it's not now going to be because James Bond is dead. So if in the next film they go, oh, we're going to change it, anyone who now has the 00 status now gets called James Bond. It's like, oh, Christ alive.
It's P00 because it's absolute shit. I'm a hardcore Bond person, the same as I am with anything else. It doesn't work. If I said to you, I'm going to reboot Black Panther and he's being played by a white actor, do you think that's going to play? It doesn't work, so you haven't got a quality. If you can't do the same the other way around, James Bond is quintessentially a white male man who works for MI6. As a movie that you go and see, the same as Fast and the Furious, if the Fast and Furious turned up and they're all on fucking BMX bikes, you'd be like, hang on a minute. It's like, oh mate, moving with the times, no one drives anymore because of pollution. What? No one cares. They're all driving Teslas. No, that's not going to happen. You turn up to watch Star Wars and you go, apparently stars are racist now. We can't really do that. It doesn't work. People are buying into the idea, not really trying to keep it real. If it was real, you wouldn't want to go. The other thing, which I thought was a bit of a cop-out, is the fact we've got the DB9 that was destroyed completely by a fucking helicopter gunship in Skyfall. While Q's not making dinners for two and Come Down With Me episodes, he's managed to rebuild the DB9 and he's okay. He's upgraded the guns on it. They're now miniguns.
It wasn't a DB9 though, wasn't it? Are you talking the one at the beginning?
Silver
well, that's a DB5, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah. The DB9 was the newer sexy one because they're now on the DB11, which is a bit where they did show one when they were going through.
The one at the back.
Yeah, but it never gets driven, or I don't remember it getting driven. Maybe
Naomi
drove it. Yeah, which was a bit of a shame, really. I know why Daniel Craig prefers the DB5, and I like him in that. And they did go for, was it the DB7, which was the 70s or the 80s version one, which the woman he impregnates, was driving at the end. Clearly he left it to her in the will, but she's driving that one. I mean, that's not the prettiest one by any stretch, but that was fine. But he didn't drive a new Aston Martin, which I thought was a bit sad. Did love the cars in this.
I think that was a callback to it. Was it the DB5?
I'm sure it was a DB5. I mean,
it's the silver one. That
get in touch if we're totally wrong on this.
Sean Connery drove when it was introduced with all the bulletproof and the gas and the oil spills and things, which was good callback. The Living Daylights Audi Quattro was used by Timothy Dalton, again an underserved James Bond. He was a more grittier.
It's got to be an Aston Martin. I'm sorry, I'm all in on the Aston Martin. If it's not an Aston Martin, it's not a James Bond car.
Although Casino Royale was the biggest Ford Fiesta advertisement.
Yeah, I know it was, but that was a DB9 he was driving in that. The one where he turns up at the casino
and the one that flips.
The one that flips, that's the DB9.
Later on, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's a super sexy car.
I mean, that's a nice car. Was that the Vantage?
I always get a bit confused. There's a Vantage and a DB9 are different. Okay. But again, get in touch with us. We obviously know shit about cars.
I don't know about them all, but
that's lovely. And then there's the DB11, which is the current one, and that's super, super sexy. And that's why I was a little disappointed that wasn't in this film, because obviously a James Bond film, love the fact that they were doing the callbacks to the DBs, but you should also have the most recent DB in there.
Yeah, one of the biggest things James Bond is known for is the product placement.
Christ, that's exhausting, that with the watches and the suits and the cars and the phones, underpants, condoms.
It's a full hit. Well, maybe condoms now. We didn't bother in the 70s.
Well, obviously he didn't use the condoms because he ended up with a kid, didn't he?
Well, no. How has he managed 25 films with no kids?
Or if he did use a condom, it's not a good advertisement for the product that he ended up still impregnating her.
That's a very good point I hadn't picked up on. A womanising male chauvinist who's gone through bedding umpteen women in the 70s, hasn't had any kids, yet a man living in the 21s has managed to sleep with a woman with consent and managed to get her pregnant. That is the shittest advocate of anti-feminism drivel I've heard in my life. Anyway, the other things that I picked up on, which I thought was a bit of a shit show, was the stunts, really. We've seen them before. The car chase on the bike was reminiscent of the rooftop scene in Tunisia, which was also copied when Taken 2 came out. Car chase over the hills was reminiscent of what was used in Spectre. The helicopter coming into view was reminiscent of Skyfall at the end when they shoot it all up and destroy it.
Was almost like a best of bits, wasn't it?
They've gone, what we got on the cutting room floor, let's either replicate it or just shove it all together, make it 3 hours. The ending is just a complete bag of cocks. Ridiculous lines. I mean, Bond going, you have all the time in the world. Oh, fuck off. All the time in the world, mate. It was a theme tune to On Her Majesty's Secret Service when Bond's holding Diana Rigg after she's been shot by Spectre. And then at that moment, Bond goes, I'm never going to have relationships ever again. And it's never talked about in 25 movies until then. He's like, oh, I love you both. When you just found out my daughter exists, but I love you both. You have all the time in the world. Oh, fuck off. So yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, well, I suppose we should really score this film.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give this the title What do you think you're doing? The score I'm giving it is 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, just no. As in Dr. No. It's not even a good Dr. No. If you're going to rip off Dr. No, at least get it right, mate. The only reason he's got 4. Daniel Craig is a good actor. The cast is great. The music's shit. I don't even know who did it. Not even that memorable. One of the other things quintessential about a Bond movie is the music. You know, you've gone from all the classic greats over the years. Aha, Living Daylights.
Spandau Ballet.
I can't remember them because I am that old. But yeah, 4. Could probably go on, but I think people are bored now.
Okay.
What about you?
Tough. I'm going to give it a 6 because I think there's lots of this film which was quite entertaining. I thought it was too long. It was about half an hour too long for me. I started getting quite fidgety at some point, and I can sit through long films. I mean, Christ, we sat through bloody Justice League full cut in one sitting, so I can do it. But when I start to fidget, it's because it's not holding my attention, and if it's not holding my attention as someone who's quite happy to dedicate their attention, then I do feel films are a bit too long. We've already mentioned the fact that I feel that they were terrible with the story arc. I couldn't buy into the baddie. I couldn't buy into the baddie arcs. It just felt really shit. I thought it was far too easy for them to be able to basically steal the world's most dangerous virus. You'd figure it was slightly more difficult than just putting a memory pen in a USB port and clicking download, which is what he did with a Russian double agent guy who might as well have come in with the t-shirt saying "I'm a bad guy" written on it.
Russian, trying to avoid stereotypes.
Yeah,
wow.
They killed off too many good characters. They underserved too many new characters or existing characters. It was just disjointed, I think is probably the word I'm looking for.
Or shit show is another one.
And where it leaves us now is either they're going to have to completely reboot the James Bond franchise, but I can't fathom what they're going to reboot it into that will make it any better than the one they already had. So the likes of Moneypenny being a good character in the previous films, the likes of having a gay Q. What are you going to reboot this new one to make it any more representative than what you've kind of done in these films and the previous films? Alternatively, you don't reboot it, in which case you have essentially drawn a line under the character James Bond, which is fine, but it's not a James Bond film after that, is it? It's a Jason Bourne film or a Red Sparrow film, isn't it? You're now basically saying you're a secret agent, or we'll give you the 00 because it's a hat back to the James Bond franchise, but you're not James Bond. We know you're not James Bond, but do the same stuff as James Bond. But then I'm going to hold you to an even higher standard, because James Bond gets a bit of a pass because it's James Bond, and going back to what we said at the outset, you have that sentimental attachment to that franchise, whereas if you're now removing that sentimentality because I've now not got the James Bond character, I expect it to be as good a film as a Jason Bourne one. And if it's not as good as a Red Sparrow or Jason Bourne, although however you feel about Red Sparrow, I suppose, but if it's not up to scratch, if it's not a strong film in its own right, yeah, you're getting slated.
They've caused themselves damage. They've tried with the tokenism to be representative, which I don't agree with the way they've done it. You can achieve it organically in a better way, because it doesn't matter. The fact that you're talking about it, the fact that you have to tell people, oh, by the way, I'm a woman, tells you there's something wrong. You shouldn't have to do that. Q being gay has no relevance. We're not living in the 80s. It's not illegal to be gay. So the fact that he is probably implied, could have done it at the very beginning.
What you could have done is shown him maybe kissing his partner as he's leaving the house to go to work.
Like
and then,
Star Trek did.
Yeah, and then Bond accosts him as he comes out the front door going, right, I need some stuff. You best go back into the house. That would have been perhaps a more natural way of doing it, because he's not then going, oh, well, I suppose, I don't know, maybe it is the same thing, because kissing your partner and saying, oh, I'm preparing a meal for him is essentially the same thing, to allude into that fact.
Agreed. These are natural things that people do in everyday life. It doesn't matter what you're
talking about the job and the role that
I'm saying that we as the viewer watching this happen, historically, James has gone to his techno cave and gone, what have you got for me? He's like, don't touch that. It's like, what's that? And he goes, it's me lunch. Ha ha! See Phoebe Waller-Bridge? I didn't need to write that. That's something that's historically hysterical. And that was the joke, especially when John Cleese played him. The funny thing was what things they've every day with the pen, what they're going to do, shoot darts, or you got a magnetic thing on your watch, or whilst also showing people you watch, was reasons why. All Bond did is turn up and, oh, you've disturbed me meeting. My partner's coming soon and I'm cooking him dinner. Okay, but let me just put your zip drive into my computer that's isolated from the rest of the world in a Faraday cage. Oh yes, I'll put it into another computer. So where's my gadgets, Q? I'm in the middle of doing me fucking soup at the moment. Can you just give us a minute? Oh, I'm burning me crumpets. Who cares, mate? Who cares? No one bothered. Move on. It's life. Everyone has their own little things going on. The point is, you fucked that up because, keep pointing to you, you've not fucked it up because 5 movies have gone and you've killed everyone off that would have given a writer a wonderful backlog and go, well, we can use Naomi because clearly Naomi is now 008.
Well, they could have made her a serious kick-ass character, couldn't they?
Absolutely.
At which point they could have brought her in as a film, even as a 007 in the next film, and I'd have been like, right, cool, she was brilliant in that last one, I want to see what she's doing. But actually she was, I mean this with all due respect, she was relatively incompetent in this film. She let the Russian geezer go. She kept on turning up after, or she turned up at the same time as Bond, but Bond won out. When they did team up, and I've said this already, she got given the shit jobs. She was like, you have to go there and find out that information whilst I go to the super secret layer and do the real work.
We've already talked about this in other podcasts. There's lots of strong female characters, but don't make it a thing. You could reel off a whole list of people who do their job. MPs who are female, well done. Do they need to be told every day, oh, by the way, you know you're in a powerful job and you're a woman? Yeah, all right. Basically, the opportunity of outcome exists for both male and female. You don't need to make it a thing. What it does by doing that is damaging the trope. Oh, here we go. And everyone's eyes glaze over and you go, I don't really care. I'll come to see James Bond and pay £10 or £15 if you're streaming it. It will be rebooted. It will go back to James Bond. They'll recast him.
I don't think it will. I genuinely don't think it will. I think they've drawn a line under the James Bond character. Okay. I think the next reincarnation of what would be a James Bond film will be the characters we've been introduced to in this movie, continuing it almost in the absence of James Bond. And then they might try and work in the James Bond name somehow. They'll obviously keep the 007 handle because that designation, because they've explained why that is the case. And I think that's what's going to happen.
That's an interesting position. I don't think that. They've tried it with Ocean's 8. It was a shitstorm. Every time you reboot a franchise with a female lead, nothing to do with the actors, it bombs. You don't need to take my word for it. You just need to look at the ticket sales.
I disagree there. I don't think it's the female element to it. I think it's what you're trying to do is create the same thing but in a different form, whereas actually it's like create a new thing which gives them the proper platform. So if Naomi's now going to be the new 007, don't try and make her James Bond. Make her fucking Naomi 007, who's a kick-ass secret agent who's now going to go around and save the world in the same way as the James Bond characters as over. But don't try and make her James Bond. Make her Naomi, stand her in her own 2 feet as a character. Put in the hard graft to make sure that she's properly depicted and served. And there you have yourself a franchise of her or of 007s, which then opens it up to you can have whatever 007 you want, as long as they are a 007 secret agent who's cool at what they do and runs around with gadgets, drives cool cars and wears fancy outfits to parties and kicks ass at the same time. I don't give a flying fuck what colour or sexuality or religion you are. I'll watch that film if it's done properly, but don't make it male-female Ghostbusters type thing, because that...
No, but that's exactly what it is. The female-led Ghostbusters film bombed because they were trying to do the same thing as they've done with the male. I agree entirely that they've got so much wealth of writing with Naomi. I don't even think they need to make it the 007. They could build on that character, and she, out of respect for the death of James Bond, says, I'll be 008 or whatever there is. There's more than 007. They don't have her in the shadow of another character. Literal tokenism. It's literally going, oh, we need to do this now because people are going to get upset. She's a strong character on her own. If there was another one of you, you're valued on your own merits because of what you are and who you are.
Oh, thanks, mate.
True story. To then go, oh, you now need to be a woman because we feel that needs to be served as well. It lessens you. They've underserved her absolutely by what you said earlier. She appears in about 4 minutes worth of screen time in a 3-hour movie. What does that tell you? It tells you they've shit the bed.
They could be arsed.
They've gone, what do we need to do in this movie?
Well, she should have gone to the big bad secret layer.
Correct.
And she should have been doing as much as Bond was. And arguably, she should have saved the day. She should have been the one who got the silos opened. And maybe Bond did still die, but he died because of something else that happened. She was still the one who saved the day. She's the one who gets away, and she's the one who continues the story going forward.
Absolutely that.
Whereas actually it was like, oh, can you take me kids and get them off the island? It's like, well, actually, while I saved the world, it's like, well, hang on a minute, dude. I'm a secret agent too. Let's throw the kid and her onto the boat, get them off. Me and you will save the world. And just because I need to now be in the next film, I'm going to be able to get off the island, whereas you don't and you die. That's how it should have been, when actually it was like, oh, no, now there's the important stuff. I need to open the silos and save the world. You go away and...
do the dishes and get my tea on.
Well, that's kind of... I mean, I know that's not what they meant, but it kind of feels feels like it was, you're now not an important enough character to do that. But actually, it felt like the purpose of introducing Naomi in the first place was to make her as an important character so that she had the appropriate standing to take over the franchise after that.
You've also got what the trailer portrayed, which pissed people off, because she was literally giving James Bond down the banks, who she's half his age, he's got a dicky knee, and he still manages to save the day. A pensioner climbing up a set of ladders, and she's nowhere to be seen.
Do you hate that when you've got the new cocky come along who goes, well, you're a dinosaur and I could do what you do in half a heartbeat. I'm not saying her specifically, but if a character was generally intelligent enough to become a 00 agent, one assumes they're smart enough, they've been trained to read people, deal with people. They will be smart enough to go, well, if I say that, I'm going to piss him off, and therefore he's not going to be someone who will work with me well, and I need him to work with me well, so why would I make my own job harder? B, the fact he's still alive and has been doing it for as long as he has suggests he has skills, and by virtue of his record, I know he has skills because of the things he's done is amazing. Is he old and broken? Yes, he is, but why is that? Well, that's because he's been shot a billion times. Well, I'd be fucking broken. I wouldn't want people to disrespect me just because I'm walking around with loads of bullet holes, which I've incurred while saving the planet multiple times. And B, the experience and skill sets he has, I could learn a load from you. So why would I treat you like a dickhead and a piece of shit because you're old and broken? You just wouldn't, would you? It doesn't feel real.
No, that's the bit. We're both self-employed, but if we work for someone and we were doing similar jobs with another person, you wouldn't go over and throw coffee in the crotch and go, you watch yourself.
You're shit.
Yeah, it's like, hang on a minute, we're both getting paid by the same employer to do the same job that we've both trained and qualified in.
And if we work well, the business gets better. We'll all get a pay rise and we'll all do better. Yes. Our lives will be easier. Yeah. Who knows? My life might be easier because you can help me do stuff and vice versa. Yeah. That's how you do it.
Exactly. But when you are responsible to the safety of an entire country, red or blue wire scenario, pressure on you for that. Probably want someone having your back. If you're working in the same organisation, you don't want to be looking out for villains.
Well, that's what the special forces do. There's programs where obviously they get people in to have a go, and they go to great lengths to go, would I put my life in your hands? Would I trust you implicitly that when the shit hits the fan, I know you're going to be standing next to me, and if I take a bullet, you're going to be the one who throws me on your shoulder and carries me off to save my life. That's how the 00s should be working with one another. I trust you implicitly. I know that when the shit hits the fan, you are going to be there to pick up whatever I can't pick up, and if there's a problem, you've got my back. That's not what you got at all, was it? No. That's not what's portrayed in this film. It's basically you got this cocky new upstart who comes on going, you're a dinosaur and you've got fuck all and you're retired and you're out of it. And it's like, well, I know you say that, but I'm actually coming to you to tell you shit you should already know, but you don't know, and I'm retired and I haven't got the contacts and I haven't got the resources, and I'm still telling you stuff that you should know, having already done a load of jobs you couldn't do by using my contacts, having been approached by the world's superpower, i.e. the American Secret Service, asking me, not you, asking me to sort their shit out because they didn't believe you could do it, and you want to give me grief.
And also threatened to shoot my other knee.
Yeah.
So, alright, violence. You hit the nail on the head, it shouldn't matter. As long as you can carry me out of a battlefield under fire.
Well, in my current condition, someone would probably do a back in if they tried carrying me. I wouldn't put that on my worst enemy. It just dragged me. In fact, just leave me. I probably deserved it in the first place. Leave me to die.
Save yourself.
Yeah.
You got all the time in the world, mate.
So, 4 out of 10, 6 out of 10. I think it's a resounding thumbs down for this film.
They will reboot it. We'll have another podcast about it.
Oh, God. Well, let us know what you think. I appreciate some of those topics may have probably touched some buttons. Listen, let us know. I think it's suffice to say we feel that the film wasn't well done to serve anyone at all. We're on social media, so Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. It's at The Two Marks. Drop an email to thetwomarks@thepodsstation.co.uk. Check out all the other shows and episodes that we've done. They're all on the Two Marks channel, which is on all the major podcast platforms. We've got Star Trek stuff on there, Marvel stuff on there, general film review stuff on there. There's loads of content for you to enjoy.
Exciting.
Indeed.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you next time.
Excelsior!
Check out all our shows exclusively on thepodsstation.co.uk.